Welcome to the Art of Badassery podcast. My name is Mahara, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Robyn McTague. Robyn's journey took her from a chaotic childhood in British Columbia and Manitoba to studying psychology and counseling. Initially very shy, she later embraced teaching meditation, energy healing, and the Enneagram. We're going to hear all about that today. After securing a union job and advocating for others for 13 years, a breast cancer diagnosis led her back to her spiritual roots. Now based in Vancouver, BC, Robyn supports individuals, couples, and teams through her healing business. She loves nature walks, flower photography, live theater, and lifelong learning. No wonder she's badass. Join us today as we talk about her inspiring story and get some insights on healing and personal growth. Welcome to the show, Robyn. I'm really excited.
Thanks so much for having me.
A fellow Vancouverite or British Columbian, I should say. I live in Alberta now, but when I first immigrated to Canada, I moved to Richmond, BC. So we're peas in a pod. Robyn, when you saw my post looking for guests on the Art of Badassery, what was the first thing that came into your mind?
I just loved that word. I really loved that you brought that forward to, yeah, let's be badass. And it's really to me about the excitement, that energy. In the Enneagram, we talk about our instinctual nature, and one of those is that kind of really passion that comes forward. And to me, that's what it excited me, those things that we really feel the energy ignite us. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can include that, but it's like listening to a piece of music that you get lost in, or, art or whatever it is for you. And so that's what I really loved, is that sense of excitement in the moment.
So good. But what made you think I need to be on that show? Like, what is it? Why are you badass, girlfriend? That's what I'm asking. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, just there is nothing that has stopped me from moving forward. And, despite the challenges, despite not getting supports that I needed or wanted at the time, it was, I need to put one foot in front of the other, and it's not going to stop me, getting out of the bad marriage, doing the different things. It took me 10 years to get my degree at night because I had to work and I didn't have a car. I bussed 3 buses up to SFU. And if I missed a bus, it was another hour coming back. So I'd be home late in early morning sometimes and still got up and got to work. So there was that drive within me. It's like nothing's going to stop me.
Okay, that's definitely a component to feeling badass. But what were some of the original? You mentioned a couple challenges right there, but can you take us back to when you first needed to feel badass or needed to act on that feeling?
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't really feel I had that option because of the circumstances. So when I really finally took a stance for myself, I was a teenager. And my mom's way of dealing with things was to move. It was kind of the geographical cure, I called it. So my dad was killed. It was a very challenging situation, even though they hadn't been together for a long time. They both were raised Catholic, so they never divorced. But he was beaten up and robbed, and so police brought his bloody clothes to her. Like, why they would do that, I don't know. So that sent her over the edge. She had a lot of mental health issues, and so she was moving again. And was finally putting down roots in Cranbrook and had friends. I had a part-time job. I had money for myself finally that I didn't have before. And I didn't want to move for my last couple of years of high school. And I just said, no, I'm not moving again. And just something inside me was like, no, I'm taking a stand for myself. And it was the best decision I ever made, because not only did it give me that confidence that I could say what I needed, I could see that the man she was moving in with was probably another pedophile. So my instincts were there. It's like, no, I'm not going anywhere near him. And then my friend that I was doing the janitor work with, I ended up moving in with his family and just had an amazing second family, which we're still friends. I still visit to this day. And my other mom, as I called her, was just really wise and accepting. And I finally felt accepted for who I was. So I started to really blossom and be more involved in things. And she lived 3 weeks short of 100. And we still talked about all sorts of philosophy and everything right up until the end. She was just amazing.
Wow, what a story. And, one of the things that comes up quite a lot when I talk to guests is the more authentic, the more we can be comfortable with who we are and our thoughts and our feelings and what we want out of our lives, the more badass we feel. In a way, I feel it's tragic that we need to work so hard to be ourselves. So much so that we actually call it being badass. But that seems to be the reality for many of us in our lives today. For lots of reasons, we have squelched or we stayed quiet. But the fact that you could find that strength at such a young age is pretty awesome and quite badass for sure. Was there anything after that that allowed you the opportunity to be even more so? Or was that like once you ripped the Band-Aid off, it was like balls to the walls? Did I just say that? Balls to the walls? What is that expression come from? Oh my God, that can't be good. But you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we have to learn and we continue to repeat. We have energetic patterns, and I continued that. Last year of high school, people said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to university? Like, what are you going to do? And it's like, it wasn't in my frame of reference because I was the first one to finish high school, let alone go on to do anything else. So I got bursaries and went to university, went to Selkirk College first, and then I came here to the coast, SFU. And I got mixed up in a really bad situation in a home where the mom was an alcoholic. The girls went through my stuff. They, invaded my privacy, read my journals. And then I got involved with her son, who ended up being a junkie, got all my stuff stolen. Um, ended up dropping out of school and having to go part-time because I needed to work because I didn't have anyone to fund me, and had student loans by then. And so kind of had to keep going through that. And I had to make that stand again. We separated, and I finally found a house to live, like a group of people renting a house when you could afford that here in the Vancouver area.
Them days are gone.
And they're gone. And then we ended up meeting again, and there was this dance, and I remember it so distinctly. And it was like, do you want to go down to the east side and get some drugs? And I just took a stand and said no and walked away. And it's like, I'm not interested in that lifestyle. Like, I didn't know, like, I got sucked into that. I didn't realize at the time until I was kind of in the thick of it. And then it was like, where do I go? I have nowhere to go. So felt that desperation, but then found that place within me, that kind of quiet center that said, no, this is not for you, and there, for the grace of God, go I. We see these people on the street.
What a story. And I'm so glad that you made that decision. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to be badass. It takes a lot of courage to face our fears and or look at the unknown, because often, well, I know for myself, I can say no to something, which is fine, but I don't know what the alternative is going to look like. So there's definitely, would you say in your life as well, there's been a level of trust that you had to embody and embrace as you navigated challenges throughout your life and displayed acts of badassery?
Absolutely, because yeah, it's taking that step right into the void and it feels scary because we don't know. But that's why I love the Enneagram work because there's this different laws that we talk about, and there's this law of three where we can hold kind of disparate things, and then when we do, something new can come out of that. So the knowing and not knowing, for example, how do we deal with that? Because we can't know everything. We want to control life, and especially those of us who have some kind of trauma, it's like that was our way of kind of clenching down and trying to control things. And we have to give that up because we can't. We can do our part, but it's really that step by step where it's like, okay, this needs to unfold. What's my next step? I don't need to know the end. And that's the way we're kind of raised in our society, go from A to B, but it's really what is that right next step? And then out of that will come something else.
Okay, before we jump into what you're doing today, because I'm fascinated with the Enneagram, by the way, tell us a bit about your corporate life.
Yeah, so I worked first, it was used to be called BC TEL, which is TELUS now. I was there for 5 years, and that's where I got involved first with the union work, which I really loved. I loved the advocacy and just, you know, we do everything else in our life. We expect to have a contract for our mortgage, for our car, all these things. And it's the same with our work, right? This is our time, and we should be compensated properly. And to think that, some people misalign unions, they're to this, they're to that. But really, would you do anything else that's so big a part of your life without a contract? Really, to me, it comes down to that basic, I'm giving you a service, my time and energy to support your business. And so really seeing that, and then we got locked out for 3 months near the end. And that's when I applied when didn't have a job. And then I just got back to work and then got the call from WorkSafe. So went to work there for 34 years. The 13 years was the advocacy work. So as chair of the shop stewards on the executive and these different things. And we made some huge changes. It was the 80s where we had the first women's committee. We got more pay equity. We looked at things in such a different way, looking at the old guard, right? And allowing women to do jobs that were traditionally male jobs, like officers. I chaired our Central Safety Committee for 10 years to shift the reason that people would go in. The men would go in because it was a stepping stone to to getting the job as a safety officer, which was the job that they wanted. And it's like, no, we need to look at people and how are they being treated at work? What are the health and safety issues that are here? We just started to talk about stress. At that point, it wasn't considered, a health issue at the time. So bringing the agenda forward for things that were really important to people, but it was really foreign as well. So having to really shift perspectives. We had women's conferences. We did it differently with providing daycare benefits and things like that.
So, would you say that you were a pioneer in the women's movement for BCTEL?
BC TEL, not so much, which was interesting because there I had what would now be considered a sexual harassment issue with one of the leaders. It was still, this male dominated, we're away at conference, let's play. And it's like, no, not for me. And so really it was at WorkSafe that we really did a lot of work and changed things. And yeah, we were pioneers. And unfortunately, one of my cohorts, she just passed away recently from Parkinson's, but she stayed and really became a business agent and really carried forward the work that we started.
Well, it sounds like that was a breeding ground for lots of acts of badassery, especially in those times. And, it's interesting because it's 2024 and I lived through the 80s. We're of this similar generation. And I can't believe that it's taken this long for women to have some of the rights that we have today. I'm not going to go down that political path, but I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done on behalf of us in that field. Really. Thanks.
And yeah, it was so rewarding to, have choices. I think that was the biggest thing, right? And that's why I'm kind of a life of choice, because we do need choices. Like they asked us to do a medical exam with their doctor to get hired. Like it was very invasive. So we had it switched where we could go to our own doctor and have the form submitted, but just really human things, right? Now we think it's just normal. So it's really interesting and great that things have changed to some degree. Always more to do.
So let's jump forward a little bit to your cancer diagnosis. What role did that play in your growth?
Well, it was huge. It was interesting because I really had started to reopen to kind of messages that I was getting in a more spiritual, psychic kind of nature. And I kind of had that when I was younger. There was a situation I had to live with my cousins for a year when my mom was in hospital. And being a shy kid, I very seldom spoke back to the teacher. But this particular day, I said, I want to do my art project this morning. And she said, no, we're doing it in the afternoon. And I was quite insistent. No, I want to do it this morning. And she'd say, why? And I don't know. But then I got back at lunchtime and my mom was there to take me away, that she returned for me. So somehow I had that connection. So what happened with the cancer, I kept hearing messages, something big in your life is going to happen. And something would happen. It's like, no, that's not it. Until the diagnosis. And, it was a shock to me, but it's also a shock to the people in my life, because here I looked healthy, right? I was running, I ate really well. So on the outside, I looked really healthy. But the stress, I was doing everything for everyone else. I was working full time, union stuff on the side, strata council, you name it, right? There was no time left for me. And, my body just is like, this is enough. And if you're familiar with Louise Hay, she talks about different body parts, and the breast is nurturing. And that's what I didn't have growing up, right? My mom couldn't nurture herself or didn't know what that was with all her health and mental health challenges. So I didn't really receive that. So I had to learn to do that for myself. And really what happened is I sat on my sofa. I just went deep. I allowed out the feelings that had been stuck there, because I, had to just be in survival mode and get things done and move forward, but I hadn't dealt with the emotional aspects. And I went to a retreat, and that's when I really felt that reawakening. I saw a time when I was 4, and I could have died at that point in the hands of my dad, and I didn't. And that was kind of that split that I'd had with my spiritual part. It was like, I'm not safe. There's no one here to support me. And so I kind of shut that down, and then I reopened it and to see that if I hadn't had that support, I wouldn't be here today, right? So really reframe and allowing those feelings, allowing all the fear, the sadness, the grief, all of that. And that was a huge turning point. And then what happened was I was having challenges going back to work because of being around all these stressed out people. Our office was quite big. It was like over 1,000 people in the office. And we worked with people who were injured on the job. So they're in a lot of pain. They're acting out because they need help. And it's like, oh, I don't know, I might have to quit. And then I met a woman at a wine, cheese, and tarot card reading party. And she said, oh, I took this class where you get energy shields. So I was in class the next week. And that first shield, I felt better. I could say, you know, this is my energy and that's someone else's. And yeah, the 4 weeks was just amazing. I felt so much better. I started to really learn to take care of myself and then became a teacher of it. And so that's part of what I do today, is to really help people to see, you know, we can shift our vibration. We don't have to be defined by the past. We can work with those patterns that we have and move beyond them. We have to acknowledge them and have that kindness for ourselves and compassion, but then we can move forward. We don't have to get stuck in that survival mode anymore.
So powerful. And, you know, sort of the three words that I always bring up with my coaching clients is awareness, acceptance, and aligned action. First, you got to be aware. And I think to your point, you were saying earlier that, you know, you sat down on your couch and you really went deep and felt the feelings. My question is, what tips can you share with the audience to not be afraid of those feelings? Because I think what holds a lot of us back is, hey, I'm ignoring those feelings for a reason, right? Because it's painful as hell and I don't want to go there. But my understanding, what I've experienced today is, if you give them some attention, they will go. We just need to learn to change our relationship with the memory, or even our relationship with the feeling, recognize it as a feeling, and then be able to sort of step away from that. But what would you say are some practical things that you can share that helped you to get up off the couch, for example, after that first time of going deep?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, and I had that thinking, it's like, if I go into this deep, am I going to get out the other side? So I'm here to tell you, you will, number one. And the other thing is understanding emotions. We do think we're going to get stuck in there and we're never going to get out, but emotions flow through when we allow them. It's when we stop them that they get stuck. So allowing the feelings to move through, because often when we're dealing with something, it brings up the same emotion from before that we haven't actually dealt with, like grief and anger, two huge emotions that most people, our society doesn't really acknowledge, nor do we help individuals on how to deal with that, to know that there are healthy ways to deal with it. Like when I train in conflict resolution, telling people and showing them that we actually have that moment before we express the anger to actually make a choice how we do that. Like, a lot of people are surprised. Do you mean I have the actual agency to do that? Right? It's taking that breath to notice what's going on in our body. So it's really about befriending our body, loving it for whatever it's going through, and allowing the emotions. And that's where inner child work comes in, where we can allow our young parts of ourselves to feel safe, because just witnessing it is a huge piece for ourselves, because we weren't acknowledged when we were young. So when we can have that moment to say, yeah, that was really hard, you know, and you don't have to go through it again. I think that's the other part that people think, I'm going to relive it. We're not going to relive it. We may have parts come forward and have that ability to see it, but we're not going to go back in there, right? We've been through the experience. So knowing things are temporary, knowing that we can have a dialogue with it. And that's why I like the shadow work, right? Where we talk to those parts to see what's going on. What does it want me to know? So that then I have some insight from it. So having that calmness to say, yeah, I may be crying for on and off for a day or two. I'll get through it, and it's temporary. I think those are the biggest things. And, you know, and knowing that we can have different emotions at the same time, I think that's the other thing that people get confused about. Well, how can I feel angry and sad at the same time, or joyful and sad, or whatever the combination is? we can have a bunch of emotions and uh, we cycle through and they can be there at the same time. So not making any of it wrong. There's no right way to do it, and that's why the self-help industry sometimes gets a bad rap, because it's like, just do these steps and this is, you'll be through it and that's it. No, it's like in psychology, we talk about the onion, right? And the different layers. So that's just how it goes. We get bits, we relax from it, maybe go back later. Doesn't have to be the same day, like just allowing a flow with it.
Love the idea of allowing the flow. And what I've learned from experience the hard way is I inadvertently kept the feeling strong because I created a story around the feeling. And I think that's human nature for us to do that. But really, when we can not create the story and just experience the feeling, then that's when the feeling can flow through. But I feel terrible, therefore I am terrible because I did this or this happened. Instantly, we've created a story. And we're great storytellers, but sometimes it's bullshit, right? Sometimes we're saying things that just aren't true, but the story itself keeps it alive. So I know when I work with my clients, that's one of the things, and what helped me was recognizing the narrative that I spun around the feeling, because it was the narrative that kept it alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because as humans, we want to make sense of it. So it's like, okay, I can see that because of this, right? We're kind of back in the other part of the brain where we're not in the emotion anymore. We're intellectualizing it. And that was definitely my story, right? I knew it all intellectually from all my training, but I didn't have the emotional aspect to really fully have that holistic healing to bring it all, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical.
So good. Okay, so how did you land? When did you leave, I guess, WorkSafe and
Yeah,
start?
9 years ago now. And, having started younger, it was nice. I had the years of service. And so I could go off on my own. And I had an amazing trip for kind of my retirement trip. I did Antarctica, Buenos Aires, and Easter Island.
Okay, wow.
It was amazing. I literally cried coming into Antarctica. It was just so beautiful, so peaceful. The purity there is just so amazing. And so, yeah, it was really an amazing trip. And then just my mom passed away just the year, like I had just left. And then so I dealt with that for a year with, being an executor and all of that. And then it was what's next. And, even though I was trained in the counseling and I did it in kind of different ways through work, but I wasn't really like focused on that. So I took some extra courses. I'd already trained in the conflict resolution and the psychology and counseling. And then I added the motivational map. It's interesting, I met two of my mentors at a networking event that I went to once and never went back to. And so my mentor for the motivational map, she lives in New West, which isn't too far, and she's kind of the trainer for North America. So yeah, really wonderful person, really knowledgeable. And the map was so precise and gave so much information. It's like, wow, I have to learn this. And it's partly based on the Enneagram. So I did that deeper dive. It's like being a high growth person, which a lot of entrepreneurs are. There's the shiny object syndrome, but it's like I really looked at, that doesn't serve me. I need to go deep on the things that really interest me. So with the Enneagram pre-COVID, I was going down to the US for training, and then COVID happened, and then some of the really great people who really started a lot of the Enneagram more in the 60s, 70s, like Russ Hudson, went online. So I had the opportunity over the last couple of years to do the certification for consciousness and for Enneagram teacher. So I really love that kind of grassroots, really knowing deeply, like he knows, I think he has a PhD in world religions, and it's all the philosophical, all the depth work we can do with it, rather than the kind of superficial stuff we see in social media, right? I'm this type, and then I do this. It's like, then that's really sticking us in that box rather than getting us out of the box personality.
Okay, I'm familiar with Enneagram because it was a part of my certification program, but there may be some listeners that really aren't. I mean, it's a word that you may have heard, but would you mind explaining it in a little bit more detail for those of us that aren't as familiar?
Yeah, it's a psycho-spiritual tool. Originally, the symbol came from Gurdjieff in the East and came to North America in the 60s, really 50s, 60s. And then the psychological aspects came in. So really what it looks at is 9 styles of seeing the world. And we need all 9. And we have bits of all of them within us, but we have one main starting point that gives us our greatest path for growth and transformation. And so it's a reality strategy that we use. We come into the world with a temperament, we're born with it. Studies actually show that now, the neurobiology, Dan Siegel and different people, and then our environment helps to shape it. So it really helps us with every aspect of our life, like parenting. It's such a gift, I think, for parents to have a better understanding, because if you have different viewpoints, you're wondering, why can't I do what's right for my child? Why are we always at odds? But when we see, oh, well, this personality style has more fear coming up, so I need to acknowledge that more so they feel more safe, give them more information, more kind of details and stuff that they need. Whereas others, off on their own, maybe they're really great at achieving things. So there's lots of different ways we can work with it. But what I like with both the map and the Enneagram is that path, rather than just saying I'm INTFJ or whatever it is, right? Rather than just describing, it's actually a transformational path.
Okay, so how does that relate to the astrological chart? Because that's something that I think many of us are more familiar with just with your signs, right? It's a pretty common question. Oh, what sign are you? How do the two relate? Is there a component of astrology in the Enneagram work?
There is not. I know in human design there is, which I've just tipped my toe in, and I'm not going there because you can get lost in the rabbit hole with that. But there have been people that have tried to look at that, but haven't really found any connection. So it's really what I find fascinating, because I love numbers, which I didn't really before, but now I see all the connections. I do numerology as well. So I would love to do a study and look at Enneagram type and numerology. Like for myself, I'm a 6 in both of those systems. So I kind of got that double responsibility viewpoint, which I did, right? Because I was more of a parent to my mom from age 4 than she was to me. And I've had to really learn that. And I can see where I can be overly responsible. So learning that response ability, what is my ability to respond? So it really helps to name things for ourselves and to see those parts of ourselves that maybe are a bit invisible to us, and why we do those things.
So what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself through your studies of the meditation map and the Enneagram?
One of the big things I found with the Enneagram is learning what support is, because that's a real need from that Enneagram 6 viewpoint. It's like, I want support. I need support. At the beginning, I can't trust myself. I need to find that outside of myself when I'm less mature in my type, because we have different levels of development. So it's always looking externally for that support, but not knowing what it was and not being able to ask for it was a huge challenge for me. And I was able to learn that with the Enneagram. I remember speaking to one of my colleagues at work, and I was off. I also had hepatitis C, so I was off work for 6 months with that. And we were putting food together for our manager's wife who was sick with breast cancer. And I said to my colleague, "How come no one did anything for me when I was off sick?" And he said, "I don't know." But I never asked. I never looked like I was needy. I kept that distance, right? And so learning what that support is, how to ask for it was huge for me, right? Most of us are not great at asking for help to begin with. And it was just doubly so for me, but I really had to learn, yeah, we can't do it alone, and I can ask for what I need. It's not a shaming thing, because when I was growing up, you were shamed for asking what your needs were.
Yeah, I'm learning every day that life is a team sport. And I think it's, even right now as the Olympics are going on, that's coming. I think more people are having this conversation around, wow, this is a great example of support, not only within the teams, and the coaches and the athletes, but with the athletes amongst themselves, and in particular with women athletes among themselves. The support that we're seeing is, I think, remarkable and perhaps quite new in the Olympic venue anyway. So support is huge. Okay, I love that you've learned that about yourself. When you work with clients using the Enneagram, how have most of your clients interacted with that modality? Because could be thought of as fairly new.
Yeah, that's why I do like to start with the motivational map, because it's much clearer, right? So they get that sense, and I actually get people to guess what are their top three and what's their bottom one. Our top three account for 60 to 70% of our behavior, and our bottom one can kind of color our worldview. So for my learning, it was my friend was really low, because when I was working full time. Lunchtime was my fitness. And so I saw people who wanted more of my time that I wanted to give them as needy, instead of saying that's how they get energized, is by relationships. So I'd do the big holiday lunches and stuff, but most of the time, and I could move around in the workplace. I loved that, because I'd learn new things, do new projects, help build up a department. So that was really energizing to me. But some people can stay in a job too long or leave because of the people, because that's more important to them. But when I can make the invisible visible and say, this is what's driving your behavior, and see where potential internal conflicts are, it makes a huge aha and opening of their viewpoint to then be open to the Enneagram, to go deeper with the personality piece and the different aspects of how they see that and how that plays out in their relationships and in their work life and the different parts of things.
Clarity is everything. Knowledge is power. But what is the motivational map based on? Is it a detailed questionnaire that allows you to understand someone's motivation and then map it out, or is it based on something else?
Yeah, it's based on a few different things. It is an assessment. It only takes about 12 minutes. It's very, very simple to do. And it's the main three pieces are Shine Square Anchors, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the Enneagram. And so motivation changes over time. So our personality is basically set. That's the Enneagram piece. And then how we see our current life and how we see the future changes. If you think about it, even a couple of years ago, it can be as little as 2 years. And I think that happened a lot with COVID. Could be, 10 years. But what was important to us before changes as we grow. And so that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a psychological representation of growth, from our bottom needs, which is, basic food and shelter, up to self-actualization. And so if we're lower in the pyramid, we want more information, We want slow change. If we're at the top, we like fast change. We want quick bottom line communication. I like to point out people who go to a landing page and go to the bottom to see what's the cost, what's this, what's that. Those are the high growth. Just give me the bottom line. So this is where communication issues can come in between people because of different styles and different things. So there's that piece of knowing ourselves, and then we can see where is that balance sometimes. Am I so focused on the growth or something else that I'm missing out on the other things? And that's what I've found, right? As an entrepreneur, it's all about relationships. All of life is really about relationships, but bringing more context and reframing to say, yeah, I need to spend some time making that part of my life and not just forgetting about it. So really being able to look at what are the different parts that need attention in my life.
So what's the biggest change that you personally have experienced? Like, what was your big aha moment as you dove into motivational mapping, for example?
Definitely about the friend. That was huge for me to really see how low that was in my map. And it's not that I was bad at relationships, it just I didn't put the focus on that. Like follow-ups, we hear it all the time, you need to do the follow-up. Well, if it's not in our frame of reference, we're not going to do that. Other things will become more important. And that piece about creation, like we have the creator, the spirit, and we've got like 3 in each of the buckets of relationship, achievement, and growth. And so seeing those parts of my needs, when it's really strong, it goes from a want to a need. So if I don't have that in my life, I'm not going to be satisfied. And as an entrepreneur, where we're not getting the feedback, we love that feedback. And so depending on the motivator, there's different kind of reward strategies that energize us. And so realizing I needed to get some kind of feedback loop. And that's why we see people in masterminds and different groups and Facebook groups. People want community, they want feedback, they want that connection. And so seeing what do I need to add into my life to have that. Again, like you say, not doing it alone, but realizing with some coaches, I think it's really important too. We see this with the Enneagram, that we can't expect that all to come from our clients. And I think that's one of the challenges we have to face, is that we want that feedback. So we kind of get addicted to it, right? So I'm helping them, they're doing really great. So I feel good about myself. And we use that as kind of a crutch for our self-esteem instead of really getting that from the inside out. And really, it's a job I need to do myself as well. It's great to have that. And it's great to have those testimonials when I'm feeling a bit down, then I can see, yeah, I am helping people, right? Because when we get demotivated, it's kind of hard to see until we're kind of on the couch and not doing things anymore, the Netflix and all of that. So it's really about that awareness and watching myself, having people post their map to say, yeah, my energy is dipping. What's missing in my motivation here? And then doing it every couple of years to just see if things have changed.
So, so good. I remember reading, and I think we talk about it quite a bit in the industry, is your outside world is a direct reflection of your inside world. So never forget to do the work, like whether, regardless of what you do for a living, if you want to know, if you want to change what's happening in your world, chances are you're going to have to change what's happening on the inside. And whether you do that through a life coach, an Enneagram coach, or whatever, just a therapy, counseling, or just chatting with your best friend, part of being a badass is asking the tough questions. And I'm pretty pretty sure it was Henry Ford that said the quality of your life can be determined by the quality of the questions you ask. Well, okay, I'm not sure it's Henry Ford, but I know somebody quite famous made that quote, and that's not a word for word quote. But the idea basically is Tony Robbins, that's who said it, is get used to asking great questions because then that's how you create a great life. So, would you say, Robyn, that over the years, part of your badassery has been your willingness to ask really great questions of yourself and perhaps of those around you?
Yeah, and that is one of the part of my personality, also my astrology, is that curiosity. I'm a Libra, and we do, right? We want that engagement. We are curious, and it would get me in trouble when I was young, but as I got older, it actually was a benefit. So I started to ask again. But it was really, I would say, one of the other things besides asking the questions, which to me, the biggest one is like, what's going on for me right now? Like when we have those reactions, when we're not feeling in alignment, whatever it is, it's like, this is a time to go inside to see what's going on because the outside is triggering me in some way. And what is it about that person, the situation, whatever it is that's doing that? And my kind of mantra from conflict resolution is be curious. All behavior makes sense. So to that person, it makes total sense. To me, it might not. It's like, what the hell are they doing? Right? It's like, I don't understand what's going on with them. But instead of being reactive, can I take a breath and start asking questions? Like, oh, I'm really curious about that. Can you tell me more about it? Like, just opening it up instead of closing it down. And this is where we often get into challenges with people because we just react and then we shut down.
I know as I've gotten further along my journey, I still struggle with feeling frustrated when, even if I ask a great question, and I don't mean with clients, I mean with my family. When I ask great questions and they're not able to answer, I still have this level of frustration. Like, what do you mean you don't know what you want for dinner? For God's sakes, just like, what do you feel like? Oh, my husband can't make a decision, or he can, but often he just really wavers, and it still drives me to drink. I'm like, you know what? I'm not making two dinners, so you either eat what I make or you don't. It's all good. But I do think that for me, I do struggle with. It seems so simple. It's a pretty simple question. What do you feel like eating? And sometimes people just can't answer. Has that ever happened to you, where the frustration that people aren't either growing at the same rate as you are or exhibiting what, in your opinion, is pretty simple stuff, kind of drives you nuts?
Yeah, and I've learned to be more at peace with it because, yeah, it's like, why don't you know? But then, there are certain personality types that they don't know, and it's honest, where for some people, it's about keeping the peace. So I don't want to give my preference. Other people, because it's all about the other person, I don't really know what that is because I haven't taken the time to allow myself to even feel into it. And some people just kind of go fuzzy and it's like, I don't know. So having a deeper understanding of what's going on for them, yeah, it can be frustrating, but I think I have more patience with it than I used to. I would say, and because I'm pretty independent, it just drives me to more independence then, which may not always be a good thing, right? I mean, yes, I like it because I go off and do what I want, but it doesn't, build the community piece. So I do other things around that. But if I want to go off to a concert, I'm not going to wait around for 2 weeks for people to decide because I know the tickets are going to sell out. So I'll just buy a ticket, right? And that's how I've dealt with it a lot. It's just like, I know what I enjoy doing, so I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to wait around for others because they can't decide. And I do have certain friends, like tonight we're going to Bard on the Beach, and it's a festival we do every year together. And so we always plan our tickets and our events together. So I kind of balance it out. With some people, we have that set up, and then other things I just go do by myself. And, that sense of independence gives me more freedom in that way.
Total badassery. One thing that I do want to highlight, though, is that it's not necessarily a bad thing to not know what you do want. It's okay. If you can articulate what you don't want, it'll give you highlights of what it is that you do want, right? Because I was taught that a long time ago is fine. If you don't know what you want, tell me what you don't want. Because life as we progress is either taking action towards what we want more of or what we want less of, right? So we've got to be very clear. If I don't necessarily know what I want, but I definitely know I don't want that anymore.
Yeah. And the thing is, we can choose differently, right? We can make a choice, and we most likely will have an opportunity to make a different choice if that one doesn't work out.
Absolutely. Another tip of being badass is that we don't beat ourselves up if we have to pivot or make new choices along the way. Because truthfully, to your point, life is constantly changing. We are always going to have to make, in fact, I don't know what the science is, but we make a gazillion choices in a day. Yeah. A few thousand for sure. I don't know the exact number, but we are constantly making choices. I think part of being a badass is A, recognizing that we do have choice, and B, being very curious about what that choice could look like for us and to get us where we want to go. Part of being a badass for sure. Robyn, how can people connect with you? How can they work with you? Is everything online? Just give us a little bit of information about that. Folks, check the show notes because everything that she shares is going to be there. But for those that are listening now, how can people work with you?
I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, and the website is alifeofchoice.ca since it's Canada. And yeah, there's different things on there. There's some book chapters and different things there that people can check out. And contact information is all there as well.
Wonderful. Number one tip for feeling badass on a day-to-day basis. What would you share?
Know that you're worth it. And that comes from within. Your presence is more than enough.
I love that. Yeah, it does come from within, and you don't have to prove yourself. None of us have to prove ourselves. The mere fact that we exist is enough to know that we're worth it. Robyn, thank you so much for joining me this morning. My name is Mahara. This has been the Art of Badassery. Let us know your thoughts on this episode. What did you think? What's your biggest takeaway? My name is Mahara. I'll see you next week on the Art of Badassery. Take care.